Anyway, Dierdre would be. Who are what's the show again? Coronations.
Coronation.
Right? They know how to say it. Anyway, thanks very much. I could say that in Grey Bruce or in Bruce Grey. I've decided it should be sort of Grey Bruce Grey. You know, because it's such a good mixture of, I know the folks are from all over the two counties. So I think that's really great. It's kind of like a, you know, not like a bi-county event. A bi-county event. Nice. So I work at Social Planning and Research Council of Hamilton, funded by the United Way, which keeps us free of, you know, we're able to engage with City Council in Hamilton in a way that not all organizations can, because we're not reliant upon their funding, which is kind of a nice thing. You're videotaping me. Right. I forgot. I gave permission for that. How's my hair? So that's a really great thing about working for the Social Planning Research Council. Now, you don't have one here in Owen Sound, but you do have a United Way that, from what I'm learning over the last 24 hours, seems to act in some ways as your United Way. And you have so many great organizations. You're not going to love videotaping me, because I forgot to tell you I wander around. Teachers say it's diagnosable, but I haven't had it diagnosed yet. I want to tell you why I'm here today. Like, how is it that this Hamilton person is here in Owen Sound? What might I have to offer you? Well, I think, you know, I think that there'll be some good exchange, and I have something to offer you. Do I still get my full hour?
Yes, you
Oh, okay, good.
I'm just taking my watch.
I just wondered if I had to buy 15 extra minutes. Okay, because I can talk faster. So I actually used to live in Hanover at one point. I was a reporter for the Hanover Post for a year, and then my degree actually is in religious studies, so I ended up working in the Catholic Church, and so for 14 years I was a pastoral associate in 3 different churches, and until 2001, and then on September 11th, 2001, I got a phone call from the executive director of the Social Planning Research Council, and I had found a way to transition my, you know, social justice that I'd, you know, been honing in the church into a secular kind of position, and the Social Planning Council was the place for that. And at the Social Planning Council, I was lucky enough to meet Brooke Camplin, who not everybody knows, but Brooke, you have to wave, because if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't be here today. Brooke Camplin thinks that she learned from me when she was my placement student a number of years ago at the Social Planning Council when she was doing social work at McMaster. But honestly, I learned how to be a poverty activist because of Brooke. She did a lot of things, but when I was away, she did a 3-month placement, and for one of the months, the second month, I was away, and because it was summer, and I came back. She had been, you know, staffing my office, sitting at the phone and taking all my calls and making me sound really important. Dierdre Pike's office, and all the planners sitting around me, because we sit in little cubicles. Like, there's no office, like I don't. But it sounded like, you know, Dierdre Pike's office. Like, she closed the door, and you know. And we were wanting to get the Ontario government to set a target for their provincial poverty reduction strategy. And we were seeking 25 and 5, a 25% reduction in 5 years, and for everyone. And so we were petitioning Deb Matthews, who was the poverty reduction minister at the time, to listen to us and impose it, or not impose, but you know, accept a 25 and 5 target. And she eventually did, but I swear our postcards were the reason. And the postcards came about because while I was away, Brooke wandered off to a youth detention center where they were talking about poverty, and they had just created this quilt. Our community, and then poverty is, and these are different patches, but you know, and it's dark on purpose because it's a dark story, isn't it? And then hope is, and of course it's brighter and contains like all kinds of lovely things, including craft dinner, which, you know, you never know what you hope for until you don't have something, you know? That was the one that always floored us. But anyway, so this is actually a photo of the quilt. We came with our camera and took a picture. And Brooke had the whole thing orchestrated while I was gone. I came back and she was at the doorstep. Okay, so we have to approve this postcard today, and we can get them printed, and then we can take them out, and on the back is the message for Deb Matthews, and then we'll get everybody to sign them, and then we'll be able to deliver them to Queen's Park, and we'll be able to make them have their target, and that's exactly what happened. That's exactly what happened, and we ended up, Brooke and I, and our partner Trev, and some folks with lived experience of poverty from Hamilton, ended up delivering thousands of postcards to Deb Matthews at Queen's Park in October, and then in December they announced that they did indeed pick a target of 25 and 5 for children. Adults, you'll have to fend for yourselves, but we will lift the children out of poverty as if they don't live in a family. You know, it's kind of a strange target. Sadly, it's better than the target now. Because what's the target now? Right. They just released a poverty reduction strategy again recently, and lofty goal, like eliminate homelessness. Excellent. When do you think you'll do that by? I don't know. Like, we'll have to just chat about that. Well, like how many house units are you going to build? Yeah, not really sure. Oh, how many people do you think you'll house next year? Don't really know. We'll have to talk about no targets. Like, without targets, you cannot move forward. So, and we've had lots and lots of consultation provincially about all these issues. So we don't think we need to do that anymore. But these are the sorts of realities that the reason you're here this afternoon is because you must believe that our community is our responsibility, or you wouldn't be here. And for many of you I know who are running for council, you wouldn't be here if you didn't believe that that your communities, and this is not, I know, not just Owen Sound, there's folks from throughout the two counties. And so, obviously you believe in this message. And Brooke believed in that message, and that's why we're together. We went to Mohawk College once to get some other petitions signed. I don't remember what it was, but it was something else about Ontario poverty. It might have been these postcards, I don't know, but so I was, politely saying, I used to work at a church for Pete's sake, so I know a little bit how to behave. So, I would just students would come up and I'd say, would you like to sign a postcard? It's about poverty in Ontario. And I'd start talking, and they'd walk away, and Brooke would say, hey, do you care about poverty in Ontario? Why aren't you signing this? Come on, and she'd follow them, screaming kind of. And I became a screamer, like all thanks to Brooke. So there you go. You're lucky to have her. She moved out of Hamilton to Owen Sound, and you're very lucky to have her here. At the Social Planning Research Council, we have 4 priority areas, and you can see them there. I work in every one of those areas around homelessness. I work particularly around women's homelessness. Around poverty stuff, you're going to hear that easily this afternoon. Children and families, I'm actually responsible for student nutrition programs in Hamilton, so I feed 25,000 kids a day with a little team of folks that go out and run volunteers and try to get support and food and all the things we need. And then under equity and inclusion, I do a lot of positive space training around lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer issues, LGBTQ for short. It rolls off your tongue like butter, once you practice that 1,000 times. So I train recruits at the Ontario Police College. I train public health, in fact, in Hamilton. It's been made mandatory that all the public health workers get positive space training. So I spend a lot of my time basically walking out the front door in the morning, trying to either end poverty this day or homophobia. So we just see, if I get a good foot on poverty, I might go a couple of days at that, and then if I feel hopeless about that, well, let's just go try and end homophobia instead. I pick the easy ones. I don't know what the other planners do in my office, but that's what I do. So poverty trends, particularly in Ontario, but that is what I'm going to focus on today, but of course across North America, all kinds of places, the same stuff is happening to all of us. Our incomes are staying the same or going down, but everything else is getting a bit more expensive. Urban and rural conversations, especially since amalgamations all over the place, and even before that, for you folks, always having to balance the reality that there is poverty in a rural community, and sometimes it's related to the food deserts, that You can't even, find food in your community. You might have to get transportation to that, but the transportation access seems a little limited, in this area, I noticed. And I heard comments this morning quite clearly that, the bus system is, not really helpful in terms of the kinds of work that you can find these days, the kinds of jobs that are available. And then, in some neighborhoods, so it can differ from the different geographic regions, but then, you have parts of your communities that are more affluent than others. And, in Hamilton, we have one neighborhood, Beasley, has a 47% rate of poverty, and Carlisle has a 5% rate of poverty. And that kind of income disparity is what's tearing our communities apart in terms of the level of trust, the level of engagement. Nobody wants to vote anymore because really what's that going to do? Everything stays the same. And so I'm going to explore that a little bit more. Jobs, I know up here there's been a loss of all kinds of manufacturing sector and good union jobs. Same story in Hamilton, same story across Ontario. And what are we replacing it with? I don't know, do you have many call centers up here? No, you don't even get that. You don't even get those lucky breaks. Niagara Falls, that's all they have now are call centers. Interesting thing that happened, I'm going to talk more about living wage shortly, but there were two call centers set up about 5 or 6 years ago in Niagara Falls, and one paid $11 and had benefits, and the other paid $13 and no benefits, and the $13 one couldn't get anybody to work for them because the benefits, of course, are so important. So when we talk about good jobs, we talk about all kinds of elements, and so then eventually the $13 one went up to a living wage, paid more, and they were forced to be a better employer, which is a good thing. And then, as I already said, mentioned the gap. So the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. And that's happening. It's a continuing pattern that's really impacting the climate of our communities. And what is that climate today? So we face all these trends around poverty in the middle of a time when, we hear more and more, well, I'm not paying more taxes. We're losing public service, but nobody wants to pay for it. And it's because of this income gap that Alex Himmelfarb, he was the clerk of the Privy Council for years and years, and one of the top bureaucrats in Canada, wrote this great book called Taxes Not a Four-Letter Word. We had him come and speak in Hamilton. He edited it. There's many different essays in it. But he talks about this trust issue. Without trust, people are not willing to pay the necessary taxes. Each worries that they're being ripped off by the other. Those at the top effectively secede from society, and those at the bottom withdraw, believing that the game is rigged. Do you know anybody who's withdrawn? Believes the game is rigged? Who's not? Who does anybody know? Somebody's not going to vote, not going to participate. This doesn't trust the system, right? So there's so much there to do, but this income inequality is a big piece behind that. And so the fact that you're having these such important conversations, and Bruce, great Bruce, led by your task force around poverty is really essential. Then we have another thing happening. So nobody wants to pay taxes, and the government doesn't want to pay for anything else because we have such a big deficit. And so they hired this guy, Don Drummond, to say how big the deficit was and what we should do in Ontario to move forward. And really, it became a deficit receipt. I have a column in the Hamilton Spectator every other week, and one of them I wrote about this deficit receipt and how Don Drummond exaggerates, according to many economists, including Hugh Mackenzie from the Canadian Centre of Policy Alternatives, Jim Stanford from the Canadian Auto Workers, or now with Unifor. So these very smart economists are saying, no, if you actually apply the right kind of formulas about the typical kinds of expenditures and revenues that we get, the real deficit for 2017 and 18 is only $6 billion, not $30 billion. And what happens is they project it really high so that then they can say, when you come to them as a not-for-profit agency or as teachers or as whatever, looking for some, well, we don't have any money, you know the deficit, we have $30 billion to pay down. And so then we talk about austerity. And so, in fact, in 2012, the Merriam-Webster dictionary every year puts out the most researched word, the most looked up word, and it was, and used throughout, like not just in the dictionary. And the word was austerity, because that's the conversation. Oh well, you know, tighten the belts. We can't afford to help people, and you know, so we'll just have to cut here, and no more public services. And I now have to battle tax phobia as well as homophobia, because nobody wants to pay, and the government's saying they're afraid of this deficit. But when you actually look at the numbers, and they had very clear evidence, and you can check it out through the CCPA, that you know the deficit would be projected as this huge amount about 3 years in advance. And then the next year the message is, well, it's a little better than we thought it would be. Aren't we doing good? I think it's going to be a little less. And then the next year, it's almost cut in half. Look at, we've been able to manage our books so well, it's now we've cut the deficit in half. And then it really comes, and it's not as substantial as they said, but all along, you know, we're all suffering without getting the kinds of resources that we need to run our lives. So it's so great to be here on a day that has been denoted from the United Nations as the International Day to Eradicate Poverty. And it's also the Citizens for Public Justice has a campaign called Chew on This. And so, oh, it's 1:30. So back in Hamilton, our thing just ended. We were in front of City Hall, some volunteers from one of our poverty groups, and some McMaster students, handing out apples and postcards to Stephen Harper. The postcards to Stephen Harper are about the fact that while Ontario has a poverty reduction strategy, Canada does not. We're the only G8 country that does not have a poverty reduction strategy. No targets, no success. And we don't even have a census anymore, so we really can't count how many people are poor anyway. You know, that was kind of clever. So, but I wanted to just show you this little clip about Chew on This, calling for Stephen Harper to bring us a federal poverty reduction plan.
Chew on This. Canada's first food bank opened in 1981.
It's off. It's turned it down.
Chew on This. Canada's first food bank opened in 1981.
Well, isn't that good to know?
It was supposed to provide temporary help during tough times, but it's still there. And today, food banks operate in every Canadian city. Food insecurity is just one of the problems faced by those living in poverty. October 17th is the International Day for the Eradication of Poverty. Let's do something about poverty in Canada. Learn more and join us at chewonthis.ca.
So that's a campaign, as I said, led by the Citizens for Public Justice. It's a kind of an ecumenical deal going on. Where's I want to be dragging that thing around. And what I plan to do for this next little bit that we have together is share with you, first I really want to affirm what you're doing in Owentown. In Bruce Great Bridges. And because I heard this morning through the task force all the initiatives that are happening around food security, housing, there's literacy folks around that table, there's, of course public health, there's so many important voices around that table that are really trying to address in a real way and through some really solid policy ways income security in these communities. And so I plan to tell you a little bit about what we've done in Hamilton, tell you some of the things that we're hooked up with that help us, like knowing about Citizens for Public Justice meant that all I had to do was register, send them a little note, and they sent me 500 bags with this Chew on This emblem, 500 magnets about the campaign. I had to find 500 apples, and then the 500 postcards that we're getting people to sign to send off to Stephen Harper. So imagine doing something fun like that in your community. Even like in, it doesn't matter, whatever size community. They get it from Abbotsford to Halifax today. They're still, they're doing them all day today in so many communities across Canada. And when you join in with that kind of thing, it gives you the kind of stamina and resilience you need if you're going to try to eliminate poverty, because you need a lot, because it's not going away quickly, and the games that are being played, the way it's being played out is not helpful, and so we have to think really strategically. We know about poverty in Hamilton. Who's ever been to this big, beautiful white place, Cox Coliseum? I'm still calling it Cox Coliseum. They have a new sign that says First Ontario, but I think it's Cox Coliseum. Until First Ontario gives me more money for student nutrition programs. And then maybe I'll call it something else. So this place holds a lot of people if you've been there for a concert. It holds almost 18,000 people. And so one of the things we do at the Social Planning Council, and that I think is important for communities to do, is to find ways to talk about poverty and income inequality in bite-sized pieces that are impactful for people, that data and inundation with numbers is not going to help, but you have to find a way that kind of brings it to the people. So one of the things that happened in 2004 is we released a report called Incomes and Equality, and Incomes and Poverty, Incomes and Poverty. And in that report, my colleague came up with this clever way of packaging the reality of poverty in our community. And that was to say that in Hamilton, you could fill Cox Coliseum 5 times with the number of people who live in poverty.
Whoa.
In Hamilton, you could fill Cox Coliseum 5 times with the number of people who live in
The
poverty.
Skyway Bridge one too, what was that?
Yeah, see, that one never flew.
Okay.
So then they tried to do another one, and I was like, just leave this one. So poverty went down by a little bit. So now I just say almost 5 times. It's like, so, because another colleague tried to come up with another way of saying it, and it was about the Skyway Bridge, which is important in Hamilton, Burlington, and so it was something, I don't even know what it is. You could span, people 10 times back and forth or something. Like, it wasn't, didn't work. It didn't work. 5 times Cox Coliseum, that's what you have to remember. And so you want to try to, get those messages out to folks about the reality in your community. And what does it mean to be in poverty? In Ontario and Canada, we use the low income cutoff, LICO. Okay, so that's the shorthand for that. And really, it started by Stats Canada in 1968, and they go around community by community and try to figure out how much does it cost in my community for food, how much does it cost my community for housing and clothing, and then it works out to about another 20% or so for other necessities, and that becomes LICO. And it's not even a great measure. There's also market basket measure. There's other ways to measure, but we have to have something we kind of agree to. So for now, we often use this one. And so when we look at LICO, then those are the numbers we use to say people are living below the poverty line. I'm only showing you this to show the kinds of messages that you want to be, the kind of information you want to find out for your communities. Who's most adversely impacted by poverty? And so our First Nations brothers and sisters, female lone parents, people with activity limitations, newcomers, recent immigrants and seniors, and carry on, and visible minorities, youth, and single folks face a very high rate of poverty. 42% of unattached individuals The difference between unattached and single is like you can be unattached, meaning you live by yourself and you're not supporting anybody else. But you might not be single. You might be dating somebody who lives somewhere else, right? So when we say single, that's the technical definition that we use. So who's poverty impacting in Owen Sound? What are some of the, like, it's going to be some of these groups, but who are you aware of? Seniors, I heard, single families? Female parent families, yeah?
Definitely.
Aboriginal people, yeah, First Nations, yeah.
Have you any limitations?
Yeah, is there a high rate of people who would say, yeah? Yeah? Yeah. We have a little town in near Hamilton called Dundas. It's a pretty little place that people like to go to, little shops, and it seems like everything is perfect there, and there couldn't be any poverty there. But in fact, there's a 12% rate of poverty in Dundas, and a really high rate of lone parent families led by females. And but I can't convince the principal of the school there to take our money and run a student nutrition program because, you know, we don't need that. We're in Dundas. Like, we don't need to feed our kids. When that conversation around food security is really about, because I know you have student nutrition programs in Bruce Gray, because I've talked to that woman who runs the gate. Yeah, that's right.
There's one in every school.
Yeah. And so, so my message around student nutrition programs is this, and it's really important for city councils to support student nutrition programs too. You know, there's all kinds of places for people to step up. And Toronto matches the ministry's funding every year, and we're working on Hamilton to do that sort of thing, because this is not about economic poverty. It's not about just feeding the poorest kids. This little message I'm telling you about now, nutrition programs are about nutritional poverty. Middle class kids don't eat stuff before they go to school. You know, how many of you didn't have breakfast today and felt like falling asleep in one of your meetings? You know, so anyway, around the world, in countries around the world, nutrition is just part of it. You show up at school, you get fed. And, you know, so we're looking to increase that kind of conversation around food security. You don't have to pay me for that little extra message. I was planning on talking about that one. And then just again around neighborhoods, then it becomes, or areas of a community. And so obviously in our downtown core, and I know it's the same for some of the, like Owen Sound, for example, and some of the other communities where, you know, your poverty rates would be, you know, you would say that probably around the downtown would be higher rates of poverty. But we can't ignore, like for us, our rural area is Flamborough and Glanbrook. So we can't ignore the fact that, that there is still a poverty rate out there. There's poverty exists there, and it could be the depth of poverty that's different. The rate might be low, but the depth of poverty could be different in terms of what people are facing and you know, around travel and you know, living in farmhouses that they can't really maintain anymore, like the heat, you know, only heating one room, and, you know, blowing yourself up with gas barbecues, like, you know, so these, I know you know these issues, but I just wanted you to know that I knew them too. I'm not a city kid, I'm actually from Strathroy, Ontario. So, gender lens, just to highlight the fact that, again, how females are more adversely impacted. You know, we still tend to be the ones who stay at home and care for the kids, so that means all sorts of things in terms of possible career paths for some people, the choices that have to be made. We still make 73 cents in Canada for every dollar that a man makes. And again, the lone parent families, the rate of poverty for a lone parent with a kid under 6 is about 80% in Hamilton, and it's the same across Ontario. Like you're going to have about the same thing here. Of course, the Ontario Child Benefit, with the poverty reduction strategy, when they increased that meant that this is how the government really did lift some people up over the poverty line, because the child benefit went up enough that that some of those families that were near the line went up.
I know what's in there, and I can't pay that bill this month, or I can't deal with him, or whatever it is, and you put that letter away, people are putting those letters away and getting cut off. Because they're just afraid. They're afraid of the government, technically, even though there could be lovely workers behind that, but really they just know it's a bad letter. So we heard enough complaints about that, at the OW operations table, the manager of OW said, the director said, okay, they couldn't change the letters because they come from Queen's Park, but we'll put a sticker in each letter, and as soon as you open it, it says, something nice, like, don't worry, you're not being cut off right away, or something, right away. It's nicer than that. I wish I knew what it said now, but it was a very good thing. It also, dental benefits, became a big issue when we did focus groups with folks, and the top thing people wanted were teeth. Imagine, frivolous, those poor people wanting teeth. And so, through that operations table, we were able to, put inventories together of what dental services there were. We were able to figure out, there's some dentists that are willing to, provide extra service. And so, that is a really impactful table. And I would encourage, if you know any directors of Ontario Works or whatever in your areas, you might want to chit chat with them.
Dierdre, I made a comment about the system-generated letters. Actually, you can modify them. We pull them all the time and change them from a slightly different perspective. Right. A lot of our clients have literacy issues. Right. A lot of our clients don't want to read the letters because they're concerned about the implications of the content.
Yeah.
So we try and make them as client-sensitive as possible.
Good.
So you can do it.
So maybe they have done that. First they did a sticker. I know they started with a sticker and then something happened, so they did, yeah, that's good. I'm glad you did that too, that's great.
I just wanted to make 2 points. I'm Dana Strange, Chair of Community Voices, and I wanted to make 2 points. One with regards to the letters is that some people are illiterate and don't understand what they're reading. So that could be a reason why they're not reading letters.
Right.
And the other is, in my experience, and some of the people that I know, the $1,467 allowed by Ontario Works is the total income. So if a single mother, for example, gets $300 for child support or $700 for child tax benefits for their children, that would be removed dollar for dollar from your basic needs. So what you get, so it's a total of $1,400 per month that you're allowed.
Right.
They will allow $200 for some reason to get a gift. $200, you're allowed that because that's sort of recorded, and you should have off dollars per dollar. So you're only allowed $1,400 per month, period.
Right. Okay, thanks for clarifying. Yeah, that does make sense, but I understand that. There's so many stupid rules in Ontario Works. Would you agree?
I would agree.
Yeah, and one of them is how heavily taxed workers are, right? Like, it's like a 50% taxation rate, Earn 100, we take 50. I don't pay 50% rate of tax. Why is it that the poorest folks in our community pay such a high rate of tax? Apartment dwellers pay high rates of property tax. Comes off their, we don't think of apartment dwellers as being taxpayers, they are. So there's lots of things we need to bust myths about. So walking with both feet means that we must walk with the foot of charity and the foot of justice. And so at this time in our communities, we must be intentional about responding to the needs of empty stomachs, of empty wallets, unable to purchase the snowsuits that kids need, because that used to be a fund that was specific, that came at a good time for people who will use that money now. You just have to budget it. That's all. Just put away $20 a month, because that's easy. But they don't budget, so there you go. Back to school and on. I know. The winter clothing allowance. Yeah, all gone, right? And so we know that we have to respond with the foot of charity, making sure that people are taken care of in the most basic needs. But for every time that we take food to a food bank, I think we should be calling one of our elected officials, pick one, you've got 3 levels, and saying, hey, I just went to the food bank to take food in. What did you do today about ending poverty? Because this is the way a system works. Hey, who's a city councillor? Wouldn't you love to hear from people every day saying, I just took food to the food bank, what did you do today about poverty? If we don't start asking those questions, they won't start taking the full responsibility that's possible. We, in Hamilton, I think you've done the same thing here, we came up with this I work with a group called HOPE, Hamilton Organizing for Poverty Elimination, and we came up with these 4 areas of questions to ask at every candidates meeting. It's about putting poverty on the agenda. And so, we stole it from Ottawa, from a group in Ottawa, and so did the people here, so we both stole from the same source. But it's about affordable housing, affordable transit, living wage, and food security, and asking city councillors, are you willing to work on these initiatives? And so they've all responded, and I'm going to publish that in the paper next week, and then whoever gets elected will have a record. Remember you said you were going to support the transit pass, so, where are you on that, right? And so these are some of the ways that we walk with the other foot in terms of ensuring that we're engaging the decision makers in the actions that we want them to be involved in. And I already mentioned targets and how important they are. Comments, questions, queries? Keeping my eye on the clock, and we're going to run out of time, so I want to make sure you have a chance to. Yeah.
In your advocacy role, you talked about the guaranteed annual income, which has been debated for many years. It really is a fundamental solution to this problem, guaranteed level of income for people based on their financial circumstances.
Yeah, so guaranteed annual income. This is, so we've been talking about it a lot, but there are 2 people that I really think are good thinkers in our province talking about poverty reduction, and they disagree vehemently about this, so I'm inviting both of them to for a debate. One is Marvin Novick. He's a professor emeritus at Ryerson University in social work. He says it's a neoliberalism kind of construction that really comes out of not good thinking. And John Stapleton, who you may know, right? I know John too, and he is all for it. So I need to know what they disagree about. So I really can't give you a good answer, but when we have that date, I'll invite you over. Come and hear Marvin and John debate that.
Because I've raised it at a provincial level many times, and just shake their heads in despair.
Yeah, because I think you're a neoliberal. No, I know. Exactly, we only just learned that more recently, and so I really do want to get to the bottom of it, right? You know, instead of just, because I would say, oh yeah, you're today, I can do something, but, others, comments? So here's some of the stuff not just that I'm involved in, but that Hamilton has going on. So we have our roundtable for poverty reduction, which would be the, kind of the equivalent of your task force. And then we have HOPE, which is Hamilton Organizing for Poverty Elimination that I mentioned. Those two organizations started, really, HOPE started first. We were first called the Income Security Working Group. Then we transferred our name to 25 and 5 when the target thing came. And then when it was clear the government was never going to hit 25 and 5, we lost HOPE, so we changed our name to HOPE. And so that's who we are now. And but I see us as kind of an activist branch of the Roundtable for Poverty Reduction. So your task force is made of folks that might not be able to, that work for the government perhaps, or whatever. They might not always be able to be the ones that are out there doing really strong actions, but are working, quietly on other different kinds of policy stuff. So that's where HOPE comes in. We're willing to go out and get on the camera and do a couple things. So, for example, when we were trying to get minimum wage to be increased from 10 and a quarter to $14 an hour was the big ask. It did go up to 11, as you know. And the roundtable wrote a really great policy paper on how to increase, why we should increase minimum wage, and make sure that got to the right hands in the government and all that. We work with the Workers' Action Center. I don't have that name up there, but the Workers' Action Center is a great organization I'm from. The name is what we do with the Citizens for Public Justice. Like, you need to just partner with these organizations, and they will send you stuff about their campaigns that'll really help change the world. And so, the Workers' Action Center came up with this great idea around the minimum wage. We took we took water and stuck a $10 bill and a quarter into it and froze it. So we had this big block of ice with 10 and a quarter in it. And we went off to every member of provincial parliament's office that day, and CH News followed us around, and we dropped off these blocks of ice on their counters and said, we want you to thaw the freeze on minimum wage. And one of our MPPs actually came, I mean, he's an MPP guy, so he's all over it, but he came out with like goggles on, like safety equipment, and a big ice pick, and so but that's what we need, because that made the news that night. That made the news that night, and that's what you want if you want to. Is there any media here today? Am I? If you want to tweet, feel free. By the way, that's the other thing that's going to change the world around poverty, right, Francesca? Yeah. She tweeted already a couple times this morning, so. Oh no! I wondered why you weren't retweeting me. I was kind of hurt there. So the Common Campaign Coalition is the kind of stuff that came up with that pamphlet that you have. Faith communities. In Hamilton, you drive into Hamilton, there is a pillar to the Catholic Church, right? I mean, it is clear that Hamilton is a community built on faith. We have a huge number of mosques now, not a huge number of mosques, but a huge number of Muslims, and therefore a couple of mosques. We have 4 synagogues, the Anglican Cathedral is there, so the seat of many bishops and other church leaders is there. How could we not have been involved in this work, right? And so it became clear to us that this would be a really important voice. And I would think that in your towns, I mean, I used to work in the church in Hanover at Holy Family, I think there were 21 churches in Hanover, I'm pretty sure we counted sometime. It was ridiculous, not ridiculous. I mean, it's good, not ridiculous, but it just seemed like a lot. Wouldn't it be nice if we all could go to one? That's all I was saying. But, mine. No. But having that voice involved is so important. I'm telling you, at Queen's Park, there's a breakfast, ISARC is another group, the Interfaith Social Assistance Reform Coalition, that started when Mike Harris first originally slashed the social assistance rates in 1996 by 23%, right? So, these faith leaders started meeting at Queen's Park. Well, I go to those meetings, and those MPPs, they flock to the lunch. Like, that is a respected voice. They all come down and they talk to all the different faith leaders across Ontario. And so, it's a very important voice to have engaged for all kinds of reasons. So, and what you'll need to do is teach those faith communities to walk with both feet. Because most faith communities only walk with the foot of charity. I mean, at the top level, there's synods and bishops meet and things happen. But in terms of what parishioners do, we run food drives. And baby showers, or all those things, or send money overseas. That's all terrible, lovely stuff, but you're going to keep doing that until baby die and until all of your children and children's children die. If you don't go to the top of the river and find out why the babies are ending up dead at the end, right? That's an old story, like another story. I don't really kill babies in the river. Come on, that. They're smart people, they know the story. Having folks with the voice of lived experience is why we have the Campaign for Adequate Welfare and Disability Benefits, Living Wage Campaign, I'm going to spend just a minute on in a second. Having your health providers engaged, obviously public health is here, so that's great. Being involved in some of these provincial campaigns, so put food in the budget and do the math. These are great campaigns, to do in faith communities and your own agencies. Get people to figure out how what it really costs to live in this community. Freedom 90 is about closing food banks. Imagine, let's just close the food banks. As that Citizens for Public Justice video said, they were started in the 80s as an emergency response, a temporary kind of thing, till we get through this glitch. Now they're institutionalized. There's more money goes to the food banks than to nutrition programs. I'm not jealous or anything, but really, from our city council, it just becomes, we have to continue to support food banks, and so we walk with both feet. So yes, we're going to keep the food banks open at this time because people are hungry, but work toward the policies that will close it. And Freedom 90 is about all these stereotypical, they did it themselves, came together, women from different areas, not just Toronto, but it's sort of around the GTA, I think, originally. But now it's spread out. So Freedom 90 is about, we started volunteering for these food banks in the 80s. We're getting old. We want to be done by the time we're 90. So they put a video together, all these little old, classify themselves these little old white grandmothers now, white-haired grandmothers, they might be white too, probably they are white too. Pretty mainstream, but that's the message, that's the interesting thing. And they sing Paul Simon's song, 50 Ways to Leave your Lover, only it's 50 Ways to Close a Food Bank. So go to the Freedom 90 website and check out these grannies singing 50 ways to close the food bank. And they're the volunteers saying, look it, this is ridiculous. You know, we were going to only do this for a little while the government got its act together. But no, you know, it's become institutionalized. And so that's what that one's about. And then the Nurses of Ontario, the Income Security Advocacy Centre, there's all the Citizens for Public Justice already mentioned. All of these are groups that are really good to be connected to and kind of mirror their initiatives. I've already shown you this. See, I'm ahead of myself. That's the pamphlet you have. Precarious employment. This is a study that we're working on. I'm leading a case study in Hamilton about the impact of precarious employment on neighborhoods. Contract work? Who's on contract work? You're a little precarious, not sure if you're going to be there after March 31st. Yep, me too. No, I think I'm kidding. No benefits? Who works and doesn't get benefits? I know you want to publicize your financial thing, but you know, for sure. Temp work is not fulfilling, like, you know, all the needs that people have, and you end up in situations like the city of Hamilton, where the city doesn't want to use its own HR department, so they end up going through a temp agency, and then you get somebody sitting there making minimum wage beside a unionized employee doing the very same work for a few, you know, while they're there for a temporary, you know, for a month-long contract. You know, that doesn't really sit well. So there's lots of things about temp work that we need to adjust. The low income is obviously a big piece of precarious employment. These jobs have low income and high safety risks. And then, you know, the fact is that in between times when you don't have work, you know, you used to be able to get employment insurance while you were seeking your next position. Now, I know in Hamilton, only 1 out of every 5 people who are unemployed in Hamilton qualify for employment insurance. 1 out of every 5 people that are unemployed qualify for employment insurance. And so those numbers just came out. You can find out for your area too from the Broadbent Institute. But the fact is that so people are staying in precarious positions because there's no safety net in between, and usually it's 2 or 3 different jobs. So this is going to be released in May, this report, and so I thought you might be interested in pursuing, taking a look at some of that. Because I know you've lost jobs in this community, and you have, well, you make it the call center. So what kind of jobs are replacing? Where are people working? Like service jobs. Service jobs. What is that? Anything else? Just service jobs? Healthcare, there's a lot of PSWs. I was talking about this morning about 0-hour contract, right? Yeah. Yes, that was raised this morning, the zero contract thing. So, you know, it just doesn't work that people, doesn't add up that people are working full-time and not able to get above that poverty line. And so we really need to take a look at what it means to be a living wage community and to call people, to call for corporate social responsibility in ensuring that the workers that you have go home at the end of the day and not living in poverty. You know, Henry Ford, you know, might have had some other bad practices at one point, but one thing he did always say was that he wanted to pay his workers enough that they could afford the product. Well, there are people who told the story this morning was terrible. That there's a couple of women who worked in Hanover at the McDonald's there for 15 years, and the one said that she can't even afford to buy her kids McDonald's food. Like the cheapest kind of crappy food that you. Are there any McDonald's franchise owners?
And they're not allowed to eat at McDonald's.
Yeah,
they don't get free food. And they have to buy standards or whatever. They throw the food away at the end of the day, the leftovers.
Yeah.
And it can't go to workers.
Tim Hortons folks, you know, can't afford Tim Hortons coffee. So that's ridiculous. And we don't, I mean, I as a consumer don't want to be going to, you know, a place I don't drink coffee. So I want to go to a bar where somebody's not making living wage. You know, I want to make sure that the person who pours my Rickards Red is, yeah. So what I really want you to notice here around living wage, it's enough for someone to participate fully in community, not just basic needs. I'm going to show you a quick video, and it'll say something about a living wage being about basic needs. It's not about basic needs. I'm not going to show you that video anyway. It's not about basic needs. It's about participating in community, and that's different everywhere. You know, obviously the cost of participating in this community, you know, in your communities around here, like, it would be different than in Hamilton, where we do have a better transit system. So participating in life here, going to the grocery store if you live, you know, in a food desert, means a trip to the taxis. What's it really cost to live in this community? In Hamilton, it's $14.95. And you've done some preliminary work here. Francesca, through the United Way, developed a living wage rate that they're going to be looking at again, including some benefits and different things. But it comes up about the same. I've been working in St. Thomas with a group of leaders there who have just been calculating there, so it's going to come up around $14.35 or so, something like that. So what does it really cost in your community? So I just want to show you a quick. I might have to end with this because then I'll be out of time. Is that okay? Right. Yeah, just get ready for your next video. Get in the mood for videos. Yeah. So let me keep talking. Boy, that Peter man's just slow, eh? Oh no, it's not him, it's Kim. Yeah. So this Kim Brunhoover came to town and did a story on our work around the living wage, and so this is a little video of that. It makes it sound like I did it all by myself. I did not. Oh, boy.
Oh, it's not high speed. No, it's not.
Memory is true. You can stare at the numbers, you can shuffle the bills, but the math doesn't change. Highlighting the unpaid balance is only highlights her dilemma. Who will she pay first? Whoever will disconnect her next.
Because I have another notice from my internet that's a disconnection notice, so I'm going to have to see if I can work something out with that.
Subsisting on minimum wage means choosing between paying for rent or a root canal. It means wearing blankets for breakfast when the heat gets shut off.
It
it's hard not to get depressed when you see the reality. I certainly had my days, that's for sure, where you're just like, wow, is it ever going to end?
They hope to end it soon in Hamilton and other Canadian cities by replacing the minimum wage with something called the living wage. That's the minimum some economists have determined that families and individuals actually need to cover their costs. So, for example, here in Hamilton, that would mean a difference of close to $5 an hour more than Ontario's minimum wage of $10.25.
So we're standing outside the first Tim Hortons ever built in Canada, here in Hamilton in 1964. And Tim Hortons is just one example of a business of many businesses who don't pay their employees a living wage.
For the last 3 years, Dierdre Pike has been waging a war on the minimum wage in Hamilton.
People thought people are being paid minimum wage, isn't that enough? Now we are asking people to do the math. And in Ontario, for example, if you multiply 1025 times 40 hours, if you could never find a 40-hour-a-week job, and do that math, you are still not above the poverty line.
She convinced the city of Hamilton to study the feasibility of paying all of its employees at least a living wage. It would be the first big city in Canada to do so, following the lead of New Westminster and Esquimalt in British Columbia. It's a different story south of the border, where living wage legislation has been passed in almost 150 American cities, covering millions of municipal and state workers. Canadian activists are hoping to turn the discontent of the Occupy protesters into support for a practical solution.
This is Kate from Acorn. We are having an action.
Acorn Canada is trying to rally support for living wage legislation
Sorry, my finger point now.
across the country.
It's really weak here. People are already emotional about it. Because if you go to the food bank and you see the working family who have to... Well, anyway, you saw me. That's the most important part. No, we won't watch that. That would be too frustrating, I think. Thanks, though. And we're at an hour anyway. So is there an opportunity for...
Lord,
You're defining me?
Alan,
No, I know how to say it. Oh, you put that on now. I said that. You said you were a friend from Hamilton. It hasn't minded its own, really. It doesn't want to show up. Well, it's been a pleasure playing your internet here today.
It's a campaign issue.
A campaign issue. Do you have any comments, questions, or queries as we wrap up and move on to, you're going to be watching Pour No More, which is, we had the producer of that film come to Dundas, actually. We had 200 people come and watch that. And it was pretty powerful. You're going to see a part of it anyway. Yeah.
Fulton, there hasn't been much need for
Oh, my goodness. I didn't. No, we have not. And we have not set up, Ron's voice, you guys really want to directly, or, it's born right there in our town. So we have great conversations. But the coffee shops, interestingly, in Hamilton, there are lots of coffee shops. And a lot of them are, the smaller ones, the independent ones, are all putting up signs. They're all jumping on the campaign because they are paying living wage. And so, just in the same way, if you are a coffee drinker, I used to be a coffee drinker. When I was in Hanover, we learned back then in the 80s about that was the first beginning of fair trade coffee. And everybody, it was an action to go to a coffee shop and say, hi, I'm looking for fair trade coffee, and then every day they would tell you, no, we don't have fair trade coffee, and then you tell them why they should have fair trade coffee, and got a little boring. But now we have fair trade coffee, and people chose, oh yes, I'm going to pay extra for this coffee because it's going to benefit the brothers and sisters that are growing those beans or whatever somewhere around the world. And so in the same way, we want to say, I want to shop at this store because it pays a living wage. Like, so you maybe don't have these options up here, but you would want to shop at Costco, not Walmart. And I'm not talking about people in low income, I'm not judging folks who, in this situation must shop at Walmart, sadly. But really, Google Walmart versus Costco, and you'll see about the benefits of paying a living wage.
We need to wrap up.
Okay.
And this afternoon's topic break is brought to you and donated by Tim Hortons.